So I've started off with a Walsingham Motor Insurance Limited. We're WIML, so this agenda will cover who or what is a WIML. How did we get into this mess in the first place? And the first thing I'll explain is the mess that we'd got into. 25th of May 2014, new beginning. O's, that's Leighton Orient to the uninformed. Staying down, WIML going up. And then my main message, man of information for life, not just for Christmas. Paul, let me start with who or what is a WIML. In the insurance market, there are basically, everyone will be familiar with a policyholder, they'll be familiar with a broker, and they'll be familiar with the insurer sitting out there. We're what sort of sits in the middle between the broker and the ultimate insurer. We're an MGA, a managing general agent. So basically, we work on behalf of the capacity, the insurer, do the underwriting for them on a delegated authority, and they entrust their capacity to us to go out to the brokers and ultimately to the policy holders to work on their behalf. So Walsingham established in 2011, 2012. What do we do? We write commercial fleet business, so taxi, courier, general fleet. If you guys get an Uber, if you guys get an Amazon delivery, there's a fair chance that we've insured that vehicle. We underwrite circa 20 million of gross written premium in the UK. And how are we judged? Shareholders and investors by profit. More importantly to our capacity and carrier by delivering an underwriting profit. Simple terms, the premiums we've got coming in is more than the money that's going out. Okay, how do we get in such a bloody mess? Well, let me explain the bloody mess. In the old days, MGAs didn't really exist. People setting up a syndicate, managing general agency, small underwriting firms, but with the capacity play and solvency laws, many more MGAs are coming to the market. They tend to be, like ourselves, start-up organisations of as we were then, 4 or 5 people. A couple of founders still sitting here today, Mark Sam. And basically, you know, the business was about setting up a business model. How can you minimise your initial outlay? How do you structure it to the fact that there's more money coming in through the door than is going out? And then at the bottom line of that, how do you ensure that you actually can still generate that underwriting profit for your capacity? So the market was massively understood when we first came into it. And you had the option of going out to some of the big software houses in the market. We all know them. The sequels, the SSPs, etc., who would quite happily take £350,000, £400,000 off you to sign up for them. That money doesn't exist for the MGA market when they first come in. So many of us enter either on a small software platform or we do it on a SaaS deal, software as a service deal. And generally speaking, the market that was out there had this really strange idea about the MGA market, and quite rightly. I mean, there's different sorts of MGAs. So you have some MGAs out there who actually have the capacity behind them, but literally clicking the ticket. So they're going out there, they're dealing with brokers, they're finding some business, and they're saying to their carrier, do you want to write this? And if you do, I'm going to take 2.5%, I'm going to take 3%. And then there's the other side of that market, which is us. We underwrite everything. You know, it's actually done at the front end. We actually get the business in, we look at it, we put a rate up on it, and we work on a full delegated authority. And that's very different. The problem is many of the software houses saw this as a broker type business, that we were just looking at business. We weren't that interested in the results. Forget that. Don't worry about that. Who'd worry about that? All you're doing is taking 2.5%, 3%, 4%, put it in your back pocket, and that's fine. That's not what we were about. So we signed up for a piece of software. Is there anyone from OpenGI here today? Okay. Well, we went through Transactor, which has since been purchased by OpenGI. Let's just say things didn't work out how we expected. And I think if anyone, I think we've got Antillo in the room, we've got some other guys here that were associated with the Transactor experience. And the data cubes that sat behind it were not underwriting data cubes. They were broker data cubes. And, you know, we'd be looking at them and there was a lot of smoke and mirrors in the sales process, as always happens to software houses. No disrespect, Paul. And what happened is that basically we were there and said, right, what we need to do now is we need to start looking at how we perform by location, how we perform by age ranges. We can't do that, can't deliver that, can't deliver that. So we went through hell, and so did, I mean, Lewis is here representing one of our first carriers, Calpe, and they went through hell with us and it wasn't good. And we were quite amazed. You know, we'd gone into a market there that had a modern technology stack, transaction, all the ticks, you know, Microsoft partners, everything you could possibly think you'd want, but they couldn't get the data out of the system, or weren't willing to get the data out of the system. I don't know. There's a thin line between those two areas. So how were we getting through the day? I think Lewis will look at us and say you weren't. And I think that's the fair statement. We weren't. We were in a situation that everything was being done via manual process, trying to download the stuff, as I've said there, Excel and old cigarette packets, whatever we could get hold of. We were basically trying to make it work, which meant quite often highly paid experienced staff downloading data, manipulating data. As we all know, as soon as you're manipulating data, is it accurate? Is there any consistency in it? And worse than that, we're making poor decisions based on that bad data. So we've got an underwriting front end, and we're saying to them, right, this is the information we've got, do this, do that, do this. And as I say, let's not even talk about triangulations yet. Right, let me take you to 25th of May, 2014. An interesting day in my life. I'm a great friend and supporter of Leighton Orient Football Club. My wife turns around and says I love them more than I love her. I actually point out that's not totally true, but I've loved them a lot longer than I've loved her. So there we were. It's about an hour or two before kick-off. Well, I'll say the next slide in a sec, but I'm basically waiting for this. The Orient fans turning up at Wembley. We're going to get promoted. Championship. Fantastic. So I'm standing in a pub and chance meeting with Mr. Martin. This is a true story. Who, again, have to clarify this, Spurs supporter. What he was doing at Orient versus Rotherham, I don't know, but he was there. Okay. And I think the next bit, the important bit, we had a few beers. I'd had more than a few beers. So the conversation went a bit like this, not necessarily verbatim, because a few drinks had been had. Paul, not seen you since the class in 1979. We went to school together. Paul, to me, you've got fat and bald. Lovely. I think it was old fat and bald, but fat and bald. Have you looked in the mirror lately? That's why he's done his jacket up.
Breathing in.
Absolutely. So, Paul, what am I doing these days? Insurance, MGA. Don't expect you to know what that is. What do you do, Paul? Run a company that supplies management information solutions. And as it says, we should talk. Just go and watch the Orient get promoted. That takes us to half time, 3:45. 2-0 up. Not worried about management information. Championship, here we come. We're there. Second goal, Dean Cox. A memory. Okay, let's take to the next slide. Orient lost on penalties. Defining day for the O's in many ways. And I'll come to that in the final slide because it is a relationship that actually does pull back into where we are and what's going on. Defining day for the O's and actually also for Walsingham. We're at a low point. We really genuinely were at a low point as a company. Underwriting results have been poor. We were losing money. In that year, we lost close to £1 million. We couldn't even produce simple reports without, you know, as it says here, the manual processes, back to the cigarette packets, back to the Excel spreadsheets, dragging stuff out, cutting and dicing it, hopefully. Certainly losing the faith of capacity, definitely losing the faith of investors. And the big line there, unable to convince our software house for whatever reason that we needed to develop an actual genuine suite of reports that would support our business. Trying to engage with EiB. Okay, new beginnings. Another conversation was had, which actually I think really is the real thrust of this. So, conversation with Paul, Nico and the team. MI problem, data's great. Just need to find a way to cut and dice it. You know, that's all we need. Just download it, age groups, etc. EiB, we reckon your data's crap. Cleanse it. Our response, modern trading system, couple of years. .NET technology, we drop tabs on the front end, everything validated. System data is fine. Just get on with this MI because the MI is what's killing us, boys. Forget our data. Data's good. EiB, give some data validation, basic rules, go from there. So again, and you know, I've got some interesting characters in the underwriting team. You know, Paul's used to work with Steve. Steve's view is, oh, why don't you just bloody get the job done? Get the job done. Get some reports out. So we couldn't see anything being wrong. Just some basic rules. You know, claims need to fall inside the policy periods, MTAs to occur while the policy is live, etc. Standard stuff you'd expect. Bread and butter. Yeah. So what did we find out? EiB were right. We've been taking EDI messaging. We've been taking claims feeds from our claims handler. None of the validation was taking place at the back end where this stuff was coming through, and basically loads of the data was not following business rules. So even the data that we were taking in, manipulating and doing what we were doing with wasn't accurate. Cavalry come along. Now, this is a very quick presentation. This wasn't necessarily the quickest process in the world, but it was a patient process, and it was one that was necessary. Portal to remove all the invalid transactions to allow us to cleanse the data, and that took us a good couple of months to actually going back to base on a lot of this stuff. You know, was what we've got right? Was what the claims guys got right? Had we recorded poor information internally? Painful process, but at the end of it, what we had was a clean set of data. A very important clean set of data. We then went through a situation of actually generally working with these guys and saying, look, this is our business model, this is what we need, and at the end of the day, what we need to be able to do is take on any parameter, any area that is part of our rating characteristics, and be able to report on it. You know, by guy's age, by location, taking it down to postcode, the whole area that anyone in this game will be aware of what's needed. So we then developed a standard monthly MI pack that goes straight out to our carrier every month, and triangulations. The lifeblood of any underwriting firm. Basically the ability to turn around at any time and know where you are in your life cycle in terms of your written premium and your earned premium, to know that when a claim comes in, how much of your premium has actually been earned. Because if you think about it, again, this is for the non-insurance people, but if you have a policy that comes in on day one, it actually takes you 365 days to earn the premium that you've got that policy for. So throughout that time there could be claims, and you may have a claim in that turns around and says that's a 5,000 claim and your premium was 5,000. At that point you've only earned a section of that. Gradually that during the year will come out to a point that your loss ratio will give a true definition. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to monitor and analyse where your account's running throughout the year to see trends and analysis. And that, you know, to the big boys out there, that's a lifeblood report that they just assume is there. To us, it just didn't exist. It does now. So the next things are things as a CEO company, I try not to get involved with reports. But basically, this is the sort of stuff we now produce and goes out to our carriers. The ability to break this down is perfect, just overall stats on an earned basis, our loss ratios. Another example, did you change the one there? Paul, he was very keen to make sure that we've changed all our broker names, so, and he wanted to make sure that.
Use Star Wars characters.
All right. And Paul was very keen to make sure that Arsenal were performing particularly badly on our account. But basically, again, by each broker, the ability to look at written earned basis, total claims number, etc. Then per product, per broker, across the same sort of stats. And then taking it down to a lower level of those individual areas within each of the products and schemes. And then taking it down to a postcode level, major postcodes across the whole thing. So, you know, we basically, this is an example of what we've got, but we can do any of this stuff now. There might be another one up there. Yeah, and that's again now taking each of our brokers, their performance by individual areas and locations throughout the UK. And this is just invaluable. I mean, you know, from a point of view of early days, we now see spikes straight away. We see trends. We identify brokers that maybe aren't being as honest as with some of the presentations they're giving us. You know, there's no reason the way we underwrite that a broker should be performing on one product 85% loss ratio and another one at 50. You know, this is stuff that comes out. Obviously, we can look at. Sure, there's spikes. There can be rationales, but at least we've got the data and the evidence to look at it and say what's going right and, more importantly, what's going wrong. So, lessons learned. I think, you know, the key thing from me. It didn't happen overnight. There's a lot of work in this, and it's not a question of saying, there you go, EiB, off you go. That's great. Can you just sort it out? It is a genuine partnership. An overused expression in our industry and everywhere in industry. But these guys do partner with you and made the job happen. Quality of the data is everything. Don't believe that you think what you've got is good. It isn't necessarily, and it certainly wasn't in our case, despite, as I say, having come on the back of a modern day system that we felt was accurate. Don't focus on the end goal. That's, again, going back to the data, but the steps needed to get there. We were very keen and were nagging the EiB constantly, look, just get something out, we can show our carrier, get it out, let's get something in front of them so they know we're making progress. And they're mindful of that. They understand the business model. They do understand the fact that the end goal is to deliver a business solution. But ultimately, their mantra has always been, just make sure it's accurate. Otherwise, you've got a faster route to poor information. Did I mention quality of data is everything? Whoa, back we go.
Sorry,
We're not there yet. We're back. Make it a partnership. These guys will work with you. Have a plan and work to that plan. Don't get sidetracked. Again, we've had situations where our beloved chairman comes in, but I need this now. Well, tough. You've got to have something that works and you can rely on. There's nothing worse than delivering something, then going back 3 months later and saying, actually, you know what? Those results weren't quite accurate. They weren't quite right. Quality of data is everything. Understand, without accurate information, these bad decisions will impact your bottom line, underwriting and company profit. Quality of the data, everything. Okay, so where are we now? When we've now produced an operational profit each of the last 2 years, we'll do again this year. And trust me, I'm not saying this is all thanks to EiB. It's a large part of it, our ability to understand what we're doing. But it is testament to where we are now. Underwriting results better than they've been in any of our previous trading years. Need and views of our products constantly changing, and it's important therefore that our MI evolves as well, and that we're not standing still at the same time. I think an important one also, make sure the impact needs of the back end of your system is clearly in your mind when making process system or changes within your front end. Invariably you make changes to that front only to find out that you haven't bothered to tell the guys that supply the data to you or put the data in the right format. Be very mindful of changes at the front end, what it does to your back end. And this to me is the biggest one. The data you hold is your most valuable asset. To me, it's our IP. It's how we know our accounts performing. It's how we know what changes to make. It enables us to say that we want to open new brokers in certain areas, that what we want to target. And if it can't be trusted, then your business plans can't be trusted. And we found that out in the first couple of years, very much to our detriment. Data is your intellectual property. It's your route to achieving a successful business, in my view. Take care of it, look after it. It's for life, not just for Christmas. And, in case I haven't mentioned it, the quality of the data is everything. Okay, what happened to the Orient? It's interesting. If any football fans are here who know anything about the Orient, you might know what happened to the Orient. The next day, after that fateful day on 25th of May, it was bought by a multi-million-pound Italian chairman with a lot of noise and great view about what was going to happen. Lots of money, no vision, end goal. I want to be a championship side, I want to be a premiership side, I want to move to a really big stadium. Didn't understand the steps to get there. We got relegated from the first to the second, then out in the Football League. He sacked 10 managers in 3 years. He blamed the managers, not the problem. He then sold the club to a multi-million-pound Orient fan and businessman in July 2017. The guy's got vision, says we might get back up, but it might take 5 years. I tend to believe him more than the Italian chairman. And to be totally honest, I think that's the same thing with us. I'm now working on good data with this guy because he talks and he looks at it and turns around and says, this is what it's about. Club's found its self-belief again. I think Wimbledon did. And, I think a few years ago, there was a lot of us questioning what we were doing and why we're doing it. And that's not the case there. So hopefully, as I say, our new guy taking over will be their EiB moment.